Hello, listeners. Thank you for joining us for part 2 of our Penelope Hates Valentines Day episode. I'm WMN. Today we bring you a conversation with the talented author herself, Rachel619. Before we start, I wanted to give you a heads up. This is not a spoiler-free episode. We discuss potential future developments in The Punishment She Deserves and A Lot Can Change in 8 Years. Please check the podcast description for spoiler timestamps. And now, it is my pleasure to welcome Rachel619 to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for letting us record Penelope Hates Valentines Day.
Oh, you're so welcome. I was honestly really shocked that that's the one that you reached out about. I mean, I didn't expect you to reach out at all, but when you said you wanted to do that one, I was really surprised, because that actually, of my Polin fanfics on AO3, that one has the second least amount of views.
Okay, so I was pouring through and I was like, I just want something so fluffy. I just want everyone to feel good. And so it wasn't even I wasn't even setting out to find a Valentine's Day fic. I just knew that February was going to be our month. I knew that we wanted something just to be super sweet.
Yeah.
And it's all Colin, super besotted the whole time. And you know what? We don't really get a lot of that. Like, Colin POV, one shot, he is just head over feet the whole time. And I just fell in love.
That is my favorite Colin. God, I love Colin so much. And I really love writing from Colin's point of view.
Yeah.
Exploring Colin and exploring what he's thinking and how he'd act. And, you know, he's got his insecurities too. Like, he does. I think a lot of times people see him like he's the charming guy, and the only thing he ever gets insecure about is his writing. And I just don't think that's accurate too. I mean, like, if you read Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, which I have many, many, many times, you see he does get a little, you know, how is she thinking? What is she thinking? Is she feeling what I'm feeling? Like, oh, is she coming to see me? Yes. So I really love writing from his point of view. Yeah. And I have quite a few times. Penelope Hates Valentines Day might be the only one where it is completely from his point of view. Yeah. No, that's not true, because I have the Amnesia fic, which is also from his point of view. When you had asked me for my favorite fic recommendations, I think both of them that I gave you are more mainly from his point of view, because I just really love seeing that. I want to get in his head. I think he's such a great character. And yeah, I adore him. Like, when I first started watching the show, because I watched season 1 of the show before I read any of the books. Didn't even know they were books. Yeah. And I couldn't have picked Colin out of lineup for the first 4 or 5 episodes. Like, he and Anthony and Benedict all looked so similar in season 1.
I totally agree. And you know what? That's like kind of a hot topic.
I know.
But I don't know why it is, because I feel like we know their makeup and costume and hair department is top notch.
Yes.
They did it on purpose.
They're supposed to be brothers. And I mean, and then you go and read the books and you hear all the time how similar they look. And they're constantly being like mistaken for each other. And like, that's a thing that, you know, Colin has an issue with, is always being compared to his brothers. Exactly. But seriously, in season 1, it wasn't until Benedict and Henry Granville were flirting, and I literally said out loud to myself and my dog, I was like, oh, he's gay. And I realized Benedict may not be gay, or even on the LGBT spectrum. We don't know.
No, but I feel like a lot of us were like, maybe?
But he was flirting so hard.
A queer storyline?
He was flirting so hard with Henry. So, that's the moment. And then
that distinguished him in that moment. You were like, oh, so Benedict was the first bro that stood out.
That stood out in a way that I could kind of recognize him. And then, you know, Anthony had more of a meatier storyline in those first few episodes. Yeah. So Colin, I enjoyed his storyline with Marina, and I remember really loving Pen all season long, really loving Penelope, and just being like, yeah, that's my girl, and being so proud of her all season that she was not giving up Marina's secret. She was keeping that secret. And then you hit the last few minutes, and you're like, no, Penelope, why did you do that?
It was so close though, right? Because she went to him.
Yeah. Listen, I'm not blaming Penelope. I'm not blaming Marina. I just remember.
No.
Because Okay.
No, she made a valiant effort, is what I'm saying.
Yes.
Like, yeah, she tried.
And I say all this because I was not super into Colin that first season, and I wasn't a shipper.
I was going to ask, yeah.
I wasn't a shipper that first season. I didn't start shipping them until after the season was over. A friend of mine had invited me to join her book club because they were going to read The Duke and I. Read the book and got to the second epilogue and was basically spoiled that Penelope and Colin end up together. So that's kind of where my interest in Penelope and Colin kind of kick-started. It was reading that Duke and I second epilogue. And then I kind of forgot about it after that. I didn't read any of the other books. And then I started seeing promo for season 2. And they announced Simone Ashley. And I was like, oh my God, she's gorgeous.
I
know. And I wanted to see her in action. And I wanted to see like how they were going to redeem Antony. And it was getting closer and closer to the premiere. And I was like, I guess I'll read the second book and just kind of be prepared. And then the season aired. And I was so disappointed. I thought Johnny and Simone did a great job. Johnny and Simone and Charithra did a great job. They were fantastic. I have no qualms with them. And the season was beautiful, don't get me wrong. But after that season aired, I started reading the rest of the books. And I read Benedict's book. And I will say I'm not a fan. But anyways, so after I read An Offer from a Gentleman, I read Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. And let me just tell you, my world was turned upside down. I love that book and all of its flaws so much. I read that book, I think I finished reading it, and I started reading it immediately again. And I think I probably read it 4 times in succession, like after the first time that I read it. Like, I just loved it so much. I think the story is so lovely. And I think Book Colin, other than the few little problematic anger moments, I think Book Colin is just probably one of my favorite romantic heroes I've ever read. He's just so yummy and so good, and I love every word that he says. And so I was a Penelope girl in season 1 of Bridgerton, and I am now a Colin girly, like so much. I still love Penelope, don't get me wrong, but going full circle, that was my journey. I remember after reading Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, after seeing season 2, I used to like search Polin on Twitter, just like do a search for it and just read all the tweets about Polin.
Because that's when it stopped being enough. That's when canon stopped being enough. And that's when you had to turn to. And
that's when I became this person who can't stop thinking.
This is the birth of Rachel 619. That's really cool. I love that your path to fan fiction.
Yeah. And I remember, my path to fan fiction, I was telling you this in our messaging, that like I never read fan fiction.
That's usually one of the first questions I ask is what fandom brought you to fan fiction?
Yeah, and it was Polin.
Yeah.
It was through those Twitter searches, just searching for Polin. And I wasn't looking for anything in particular. I just wanted to see what people were saying about them.
Yeah.
Because, that I saw a tweet from, I'm not going to say their Twitter user handle because I don't want to out them, but the AO3 user, the Sushi Monster, I saw her posting links, like she had a whole thread of all of her AO3 works, and so I started just reading them one after the other. So those are my first fan fictions I think that I'd ever read.
Yes. I could see why you were absolutely hooked because Sushi Monster's amazing.
She's amazing.
So I could see why you started there and then you were like, I'm done. This is it. This is where I live.
And then I was like, I have to keep going. And then that's when I started writing for Polin, and
so what was that moment that led you there? And I think actually you telling us your journey here explains why your first several fan fictions were Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, Missing Scenes. I love that.
Yeah, because I wrote those basically after reading the books so many times in quick succession, and then reading a bunch of fan fiction and being like, well, here are the scenes that I would have liked in the book. Like, here's some things.
But do you know what's so cool about that is that, like, you were writing fan fiction for the books.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of us who read the books and who've read the books a million times, we want to will the mirror scene to be there. We want to open it up and be like, poof, it's in there, but it's never going to be in there. And it's the exact same feeling when you watch a show and you're missing something and you just want it so bad. So I just think that it's so cool that our fandom is full of people who write for show and who write for book and who write for book and show. And we all, for the most, most of us have read book and seen the show. Not everybody, but like we can appreciate each author and each fic on so many different levels. We just need to key into where they're coming from. So yeah, but it's very, very cool that your impetus into writing fan fiction was the book Romancing Mr. Bridgerton.
It was 100% the book and not the show. Yeah, and those first 3 that I wrote that were all like missing scenes were I was definitely basing those on the book characters, like the book version of Penelope and Colin versus the show versions. And I will say, I was not a snob about fan fiction before, but I just didn't really get it. Like, I was a writer. I wrote romance novels prior to writing any fan fiction.
Excuse me? You're just going to drop that? Say more. You were a writer.
We can come back to it. But so I was a writer, and I knew a lot of other writers, and some of them wrote fan fiction, and they would tell me about it, and I just didn't get it. I didn't understand if you have a property, like a book or a movie or a TV show, that has characters or a world or a plot that you love, why you would then need an outside source that's not like the original creator. I just didn't get it. And so then finding The Sushi Monster, finding AO3, finding all of these Polin fan fictions, that is when I started to get it. Like, because I can't get enough. And even though these words that these other creators are writing are not Julia Quinn's, they're not Shonda Land's versions of the characters exactly, like you get the essence, you get the vibes, and you get to see them in scenarios that those original creators probably are never going to put the characters in. And so I'm 100% a convert, and I'm sorry that I didn't understand it. And I will say, when I say that I didn't understand it, I didn't begrudge anybody. Like, I wasn't judging anybody but I just didn't get it. It didn't make sense to me. And now it does. Yeah. So, yeah.
Hello. Absolutely brilliant interview so far. How are you holding back on me? Like, oh, I'm just an author. No bigs.
Well, I'm not really. I'm a writer. I have written 6 novels, some short stories, some poetry. The poetry is terrible.
I'm laughing so hard.
And the novels.
You're not wait, what did I called you an author?
Good.
You said not really. They're not good. I highly doubt that. I highly doubt that. I've read so much of your words. I highly doubt you just recently started becoming a good writer. That would be strange.
No, I've been writing since I was a kid. Like, I was in this. Anybody who listens to this who's also a writer will kind of get this. I was in like a writing club, like a 6 a.m. writers club when I was in middle school, like that my one of my English teachers like hosted. So we would come like before school started. I said 6 a.m. That can't possibly be correct. Maybe 7 a.m. We would come before school started, and we would like share our little stories. And so that's kind of when I started writing, and those were really bad, but, I was in middle school. What can you do? And, I just kind of wrote on and off various things all kind of throughout. And then I really started writing a lot in my, like, mid-20s. And I wrote my first novel, which is, like, it's sort of a romantic comedy, but it's not super heavy on the comedy, so more of just, like, a straight romance, I guess you could say.
Yeah. But, like, a light romance, not a drama.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did self-publish that one. So you can buy that one if you want. I don't recommend it, but you can.
Well.
And then
you can.
You can. And then
link that.
I will. Okay. And then I have a second one that I self-published. It's more of a romantic fantasy.
So when I read Colin fan fiction, I wonder how many published authors we have under the tag. And now you have revealed yourself as one of them, and I love it.
I'm one of them. But I'm not. But it's not real. So, like, I will say, this is sort of why I stopped writing my own original fiction, because I did this I did this Pitch Wars thing a few years ago. I can't even remember how long it was. But the idea behind it is you have a published author who's like your mentor, and they are helping you polish up your book to pitch to a whole bunch of agents. And my mentors were wonderful. The problem was I kept having panic attacks trying to edit my book. Like, I just couldn't do it. And it was a very much, I'm sure again, if there are writers listening to this, they will relate, but it was very much a big imposter syndrome kind of situation happening, where it wasn't that I was afraid of losing the previous versions. I was afraid I could not make it better. Like, I was physically incapable of making it better. So I didn't even get to the pitch portion. Like, I couldn't even make it there because I kept breaking down and like not being able to actually edit my work. So one of the things I really love about writing fan fiction is that I can edit as little or as much as I want, and I do. I do not edit very much at all before I just hit publish, because it doesn't matter. Like, if it's the best thing.
If it matters to someone, that's their problem, honestly. Yeah. If they're going to negate all of your all of someone's amazing thoughts and ideas that they've given to us for free because it needed a little bit more editing, then that is on them. Honestly, I'm going to keep reading because I don't care.
Yeah, some of my favorite stories that I have read in the Polin fanfiction world have been from non-English speakers.
And I'm so thankful that they take the time to translate it, because Google Translate, it's so different than having an author translate something for you and go through it and really just do their... Yeah, I'm so thankful for our multilingual authors. Yeah.
Yeah. All of our wonderful Spanish speaking and Portuguese speaking and French speaking. Whenever I get, I'm so delighted whenever I get a French comment on one of my AO3 works, because I speak a very, very small amount of French. And when I say speak, I can pick out words. I can't actually speak it. But sometimes I'll get a comment and I can understand most of it, and I get so excited. And then I'm like, yes. So if you're French and you read any of my fanfics, please leave me a comment in French, because I love that.
There you go. You heard it here.
Yeah.
I love that you brought up the editing aspect of it too, because like every author, and that's the thing, it's fan fiction, it's free. The most important thing in the whole scenario is that you, the author, feel good.
Yeah.
And some authors just want to get it out. Yeah. Like, they want to write it and get it out, and then it's out there. And then some authors want to read it over and over and over again and make sure, and everything in between. And it just is whatever makes you the happiest.
Yeah.
Is going to translate for us, the reader.
Yeah.
Because then you're not stressed about all of that other stuff. And anyway, yeah.
Yeah. And for me, it's always been, I just want people to read it. I don't really care as so much about, like, can it be better? Because in my head, it probably can't be better. So I'll just get it out there. It's fine. And not that I'm saying it's great or perfect when
I don't see how it could be better. So I'm just going to affirm you in saying I don't see how you could have made it better. Like, it's really just so wonderful.
So if anybody does want to read any of my original work, there are 2 self-published books on Amazon. If anybody's interested, I can send them the link.
Well, I'm definitely going to
okay.
No, for reals. I'm going to link it when I link your AO3 author profile. I'll make sure on Instagram I'll give it its own page with that. And
you don't have to,
because
it's fine.
You are very talented. Because I was going to link it with information for Yellow Duck Crochet and Knit as well. We haven't even talked about that. So you're just like a creative person. Creativity just is constantly oozing from you. What is a nicer way of saying that? What's a nicer way of saying you're a very creative person?
Well, I mean, I think that's fine. I am not. I actually don't think that of myself as a very creative person, which I know sounds weird. I collect hobbies.
You enjoy them. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yes, I do.
You don't just like collect them, but like you seem to really enjoy and dive into and love exploring. Like, there's a real love of creating that I feel from you, even now listening to more about your creative process as a writer. So. Yeah. So I would say I'm a creator, not that I'm creative.
I'm not good at...
I hear you. I totally hear you.
The artistic side of creating. Like, I don't know what colors look good together, and I can't design things, and I don't,
But you get inspired and you make things. You like making things. You're a maker.
I'm a maker. So
love that. I like the things you make.
Thank you. I kind of always have been. I've always been a big reader as well. And then when I was a kid, I just picked up little hobbies here and there. And now that I'm an adult, and I'm a single adult with no kids or responsibilities outside of myself, it's nice that I have something, like an outlet so I'm not just like sitting at home staring at the TV all of the time. I have something to do with my hands, and I like keeping my hands busy.
That's very cool.
So the crochet, I learned crochet back in April of last year, so it hasn't quite been a year yet. But I picked it up, I think, fairly quickly.
But you mixed your mediums, you mixed your whatever, media or mediums. Yeah. Your worlds collided.
They did.
Your Bridgerton fandom world and your crochet world collided months after you picked up crocheting.
I just randomly entered the contest on the Shape of Things Instagram page. Yes. Never, ever thinking that I would win. I wanted to see the show so badly, but I didn't think I was going to win the contest, and I couldn't afford to go to London. I live in the States, and
I checked that ticket out, and it was intense.
Plane tickets right now overseas are astronomical.
Yeah.
And I was working, I think I was in a meeting maybe when they announced the winner, so I didn't see the winner. I can't
believe it.
So I didn't know that I had won until I was finished with the meeting and I had gone back to my work computer. And I think I got on Twitter for something, and somebody had tagged me like, "Hey, congratulations, oh my god, this is so cool."
Oh my gosh, no way.
So then I went to Instagram and I saw it, and I remember responding to it like, "Oh my god, that's so exciting, but I can't go, like I can't afford to go." And I was talking to this lovely associate producer of The Shape of Things, and she was like, "Oh, that's really, let us, think about it. Let us know if you can't, we'll give it to somebody else."
Yeah. Oh, I bet your heart was like, oh.
I know. And so, I finished that conversation. I got up and I went over to the other side of my office where my boss and two of my coworkers have their cluster of offices. And I was like, oh my God, I won this contest to see a play in London. Really want to see this play, but I can't afford a plane ticket to London. And they were all just kind of looking at me like, what are you talking about? And I kind of explained a little bit about how into Luke Newton I was without being weird about it. And which,
yes.
And they all just kind of were like, just go. And I was like, no, I don't have the money for it. They're like, put it on your credit card. Like, this is like, clearly it's meant to be. Clearly you really want to go. And so I did it. Anyways, a long story short, when I went there, and I was talking to, like, the associate producer had met me when I showed up, and, like, she bought me a drink, and we were talking about things. And I mentioned, I was like, yeah, so I happen to write fan fiction for Bridgerton, for Polin specifically. And I had mentioned that, at the time I had kind of a popular fan fiction, and so I had a lot of Twitter followers from that. And that everyone was being so kind, and everyone was being so supportive, and everyone was, like, so excited to hear about my experience. And so that's why, like, I knew I had to do it. Even if it was going to put me in debt for a little while, I knew I had to go.
You made it work, is the thing is. You took it seriously. You took the commitment seriously, the financial commitment seriously, but you made it work. And I'm always for experiences. I'm always for experiences over things.
Yeah.
Where did you sit?
I was pretty close. I was in the second row, towards the... like on the right-hand side of the theater, towards the aisle. So, like, sort of center-ish.
Yeah. So did you get a good view of him when he got in the audience?
He was, like, right in front of me, sort of.
Oh.
Like, he was on the first row, kind of center in the first row, and I was on the second row off to the left. So he was in front of me and a few over when he came and sat in the audience. But there was an empty seat right beside me the whole play. So I was convinced that he was going to come and sit in that seat because I knew he sat in or if not him, like Carla or somebody, because I knew that a couple of the actors sat in the in this. So anyways, they were also filming the show while I was there. And so I knew before they announced it.
You were at the filming show. I've seen the performance you saw.
Yeah. So you've probably seen me. You've probably seen me in the audience. Because
I got to look for your dress.
Yeah, it was just phenomenal. And I'm a huge theater geek. I love theater. I wanted to be an actress when I was younger. So seeing it in person and seeing how good Luke Newton is as an actor. He is phenomenal. I cannot wait to see what he does in season 3. He's just so good. He's so. I was literally blown away. He was everything you want somebody to be. And he did it in an American accent, which is so impressive. His American accent is really good. There was a moment when I got to go backstage and meet the cast, and Carla had mentioned something about about Luke and her kind of switching back and forth between their American accents and their natural British accents, and how it annoyed their friends. And I was like, oh, were you speaking in your American accents just now? Because I didn't even notice. Like, it was so natural coming from both of them. I will say Luke did not say a lot when I met him. He was super nice. And the moment I met him was kind of surreal, and I will remember it for the rest of my life.
Do tell.
Yeah, she had taken me kind of around the corner backstage, like through this hallway, to get to where I was going to meet them. And we were about to go through these double doors, and I assumed that was just kind of the entrance to the backstage, and we would kind of go further back to like a green room or I don't know, something like that. But when those doors opened, the cast, Amber, Luke, and Carla, were right there, like waiting for me in this small little alcove.
Yeah, so that's the pictures that you took, right? And they were still in costume.
They were still in costume. It was immediately after the curtain call. As soon as the doors opened, Luke spread his arms out so wide and just immediately came and gave me a hug. Like, immediate. Like, it was, I didn't have to ask for it. It was like, the doors opened, he's coming towards me for a hug.
Did time move fast or time stand still?
Definitely a little bit of both. Like, I know as soon as he like let go of me, I know I buried my face in my hands because I could feel how red my face got. Because I wasn't expecting, I thought that we were going to have a little bit more of a ways to go. I wasn't expecting them to be right there.
This is when I pause the podcast and ask you.
Yeah.
How, what were those arms like? Were they?
Yeah, they were pretty nice.
They were very nice.
They were pretty nice. I will say a lot of people ask me, did he smell good? So I will answer that question because I know a lot of people ask.
Yeah, I feel like lots of people want to know how he smells. But he just had done the show.
He had just done the show. I couldn't smell anything except for the leather coat that he was still wearing. He was still wearing his leather jacket. That's all I smelled.
Wilson's leather coat, so perfect.
Yeah. So I can't answer the question of whether or not Luke smells good because even though I hugged him twice, the only thing I smelled both times was just his leather jacket. He smelled like leather to me, and that was great.
That's hot.
But he's so tall, and actually all of the cast were much taller than me. But they were also sweet. Amber and Carla did most of the talking, and I was kind of explaining about my whole weekend and getting there and everything, and telling them that I had to fly back the next day, like so I couldn't like do anything. And Luke he was pretty quiet. I didn't get like an individual picture with Luke, which I really would have liked. My book, I wanted him to sign Romancing Mr. Bridgerton for me, but my book was in my suitcase, which if you followed my Twitter thread,
gosh, yes,
my suitcase got left in Iceland, so I didn't have my book.
Petition to get Rachel 619's Romancing Mr. Bridgerton book signed. Oh, my heart. That's right. I totally forgot.
Yeah. The only thing that I got to really mention about Bridgerton was when I gave them the ducks.
Yes,
so
ducks. That's when Yellow Duck, I love that you were
That's when Yellow Duck was born.
With gifts, yes.
My original plan was to make enough of the ducks that everybody on the cast and crew could have one. Aww. And my reasoning was that the play sort of has a bit of an ugly duckling theme, like a dark ugly duckling theme. And so I was making them ugly ducklings, And, I figured they probably get asked for like autographs when people come backstage and like when they meet people, and so I wanted to give them something in return. Like they gave me the tickets and this great experience. Yeah. And so I just wanted to give them something in return. And so Luke picked a yellow duck. They were all different colors.
That's so cute.
I had them all in my hands. There was a bunch of different colors. And Luke held out his hands, which were twice the size of my hands. That's another thing I will never forget. He held out his hands for me to put them into, and so I, gave him all the ducks, and he started kind of holding his hands out to people to choose the ones that they wanted. And
oh, that's so sweet. Oh, that's such a sweet detail. My heart.
I know Majid took a a royal blue one that he said his son was gonna love. Carla took a green one, and Amber took like a turquoise one.
But Luke took yellow?
And Luke took yellow. And
there was more than those colors to choose from, is what you were saying.
There were more than those colors to choose from. He could have had any of the other ones. And when he took it, I really almost fainted. Like, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe he actually chose a yellow one. Now, I would have chosen a yellow one too, just because I think ducks are supposed to be yellow. So that could have been why he chose that. I don't know the inner workings of his mind. But in my mind, I was like, oh. But he took the yellow one.
We're acting like pollinators should act.
Yeah, exactly. God, I hope he never listens to this. Luke, I'm sorry.
What? Do you hope Luke never listens to my podcast?
No, this part right here, me talking. So after they kind of distributed them, and we had moved on to something else. I don't know what we're talking. Oh, I was telling them the meaning of the ducks. Yeah. And then I sort of got his attention. I kind of touched him on his arm, and I said, the ducks are also sort of a nod to Colin Bridgerton. And I was just going to leave it at that. And Luke kind of nodded like, oh. And then Amber, this is probably my favorite part. Amber looks at me and she's like, oh, what do ducks have to do with Colin Bridgerton? And then she goes, I'm sorry, I don't watch Bridgerton. And so I said, oh, that's okay. As if,
you forgave her?
Yeah, I forget, and Luke is probably thinking, who gives a, who cares? I'm the one on the show, I don't care. And I'm, telling you, oh, it's okay. And so then, she's like, what do ducks have to do with Colin Bridgerton? And she proceeds to say something like, I don't know who this guy is. He's just been following me around for the past couple of months, which was hilarious. And so then I explained, I was like, oh, well, there's this scene in season 2 where Colin is worried because everybody else has their life figured out and he doesn't really, and he's just feeding the ducks. And Luke's kind of nodding as I say it. And really? Amber's like, yeah. And Amber's like, oh, poor Col. And it's so cute. And Colin, Luke kind of again, was just kind of nodding along, yep, poor Col. And I said, well, it's okay. He's going to be doing pretty well coming up pretty soon.
Oh,
and
such a good
again,
answer.
Luke just kind of nods. And he's like, but yeah, I can't say anything about that. And I was like, oh, really? Not even just a little bit? And mind you, this was less than a week after Brazil and Nicola telling people that they'd broken furniture. Less than a week
oh my God.
later. And Luke is so tight-lipped.
Post-broken furniture knowledge.
Yeah, and Luke won't say anything about it. And I was like, okay. So I didn't push it. I didn't ask any other questions because, again, I didn't want to alienate the rest of the cast. And I had already mentioned to Carla and Amber at one point, I think Luke was standing there when I said this, that because my trip had been weird and I lost my bag, that I had to kind of go out 2 hours before the show and find a dress and find makeup and find stuff to do my hair because Luke Newton couldn't see me looking like this.
In the airport outfit.
Yeah. So anyways, so that was my trip. So he got a yellow duck. I don't know if he still has it. Because the picture that we took of the group, the other 3 actors were holding up their ducks. But of course Luke didn't. And so I had texted...
Well, he was too busy holding you.
Yeah. So I had texted the associate producer on WhatsApp to ask, I was like, I know this is a lot. You guys have done so much for me. If it is at all possible that I can get a picture of Luke with his duck, I would really appreciate it. But it's totally fine if not. And she's like, oh, I'm sure he won't mind. And then I never heard from her again. Yeah. So, if you are listening, I won't share it with anybody. I just want it for me. Just should know that you are in possession.
Okay, I like this better that you want Luke to be listening.
I just want to know that you still have it in your possession. I won't share it. I just need it to know for my own pure heart that you still have it. So yeah, that was my experience meeting Luke. He was fantastic. The whole cast and crew was fantastic.
So like, it must have been so surreal this is a meaningful fandom to you enough that you like started writing again.
Yeah.
That you started writing in a medium that you'd never even thought about writing in before.
Yeah.
Not even in a bad way. Not that you dismissed it, just that like it wasn't something that called to you before. So like, this fandom is meaningful to you. It must have been so surreal.
Yeah, it was. And this is really the first fandom that I have been a part of. So obviously I've been fans of other things, obviously. Yeah. Huge like Jane Austen fan, like love Jane Austen. But I've never been a part of a community in terms of fandom before Polin. Again, it's not that I just didn't need it, I guess. And for whatever reason, this is the one that called to me, and this is the one that I really desperately needed to be a part of. And so here I am.
And that it offered you that really, really special experience.
Yeah.
Is pretty stinking cool.
I've never thought of myself as a lucky person. In fact, like, there's kind of a joke in my family that I am the unlucky person. Like, you know, something bad happens, you're like, oh, that's so Rachel kind of thing. But I was telling somebody that I didn't know very well about some of these things, like, you know, going to meet Luke and whatever. And they're like, oh my God, your life, like, you are like so lucky. Like, you do all these cool things. And it really helped me appreciate a lot more some of the very cool things that I have gotten to do in my life. And that was definitely a very cool thing that I got to do in my life that I will always be very grateful for. I'm gonna cry. Yeah, not really.
Oh, I'm happy for that. You deserve it. So I'd planned on asking you what it was about Bridgerton that draws you to it. And then I got a question from a new listener yesterday, asking who your favorite sister is. And then I immediately thought, perchance the nature of the Bridgerton family all in and of itself is what draws you to this universe as a whole. So when I got that comment from your sister, oh no, I have no idea if it's your sister. It was from a listener. It
was from my sister, because she texted me and told me. She said, I asked a question, and like she responded, because I had shared your story on my story, and she responded to that. And was like, I asked a question. I was like, oh God, is it embarrassing? And she's like, no, but you'll know it's from me. Now, she probably doesn't know anything about Bridgerton, so she probably doesn't realize, like, asking who's your favorite sister, if like a random person asked that about somebody who's going to be talking about Bridgerton, they could just be, who's your favorite Bridgerton sister?
No, it's so Bridgerton. It's such a good question.
It's so I'm going to answer it that way instead of answering my personal favorite sister of my blood. My favorite Bridgerton sister is Hyacinth.
I knew it.
How can she not be?
I love her so much.
She's so great. So she's so funny. Yeah. She's so spunky.
You do so good at writing Hyacinth.
Oh, thank you.
I love your Hyacinth.
I don't write her very often because there is such an age gap between Colin and Hyacinth, but I do love when she is included in something because she just always...
I love my feelers. I always notice, though, because my feelers are always up for Hyacinth, and when I see people totally nail Hyacinth, I'm like, oh, I love it so much. You did the Romancing Mr. Bridgerton missing scene with Hyacinth having to chaperone.
Yes, yeah. That was...
And her bribing him.
That was my second Polin fanfic, yeah. And she...
Was it? And you had Hyacinth in it.
I had Hyacinth in it, and she... Well, because, I mean, if she was asked to chaperone, that is how she would act. Like, we just know if somebody's asking Hyacinth...
We know, especially from the epilogues, the second epilogues.
Yeah.
We get to see Hyacinth when she's...
At her mischief-making.
Yeah, at her mischief-making best, right?
Yeah.
Let's dive into Penelope Hates Valentines Day.
Okay, we can.
So first of all, I was super excited I already told you how excited I was about this piece. And I should also say that, like, while we're editing it, Mr. Fics and Rex keeps, like, taking his headphones off and going, this is so sweet.
Aww.
Yeah, literally always, like, every time I go into the room, he'll take his headphones off and be like, this is so sweet.
I hope that he gets some inspiration for Valentine's Day coming up.
Like, I'm like Penelope. I'm like, it's just any day. But then, no, she's a believer.
She's 100% a believer.
Yeah.
She's a believer, but she's, I think, become a little bitter about the holiday because that's how I am. So I get Penelope, I get her annoyance with this holiday. And I think if I had somebody that I had been crushing on and really thinking that I was in love with for so long, and they all of a sudden started showing me this kind of attention, like, I'm sure this Colin is still friends with her, still flirts with her, it's still his charming self. But he wouldn't have started giving her gifts, kissing her on the cheek. You know, those would have been things that just started when he realized his feelings and realized he was going to do something about his feelings. So in the story, he mentions
that because it was a big deal to him in the story to do it.
It's a very big deal for him to do it.
And it's so cute that it's a big deal.
He's worried that she's not going to feel the same. He's worried it's going to affect their friendship. And I think you do have to have kind of that dynamic in a modern AU, I think, because again, even if you have a Penelope who hasn't really had boyfriends or really had attention from men, that's probably not going to be the perspective of Colin. He's probably not going to see it that way. Even if he kind of notices that she doesn't really date or whatever, he's not going to be thinking nobody ever notices her because he notices her. Yeah. So he's still going to have some of those same insecurities of, well, what if she doesn't see me the same way? What if she doesn't like me like that?
I love that reasoning.
Yeah, so
yeah, that's a really cool way of thinking about it.
Being a little bit more forward, and I wanted it to kind of be important, like at the beginning when Eloise is like, "Oh my God, do you like her?" And he's like, "No, I love her." I wanted kind of the impetus for him to reveal his feelings to Penelope, to be that Eloise had figured him out, because that was sort of one of the things that was holding him back. Like, how is Eloise going to react to this? So when Eloise knows, he knows that that's it. Okay, she knows she hasn't like completely destroyed me. And now if I don't tell Penelope, it's only a matter of time before Eloise does.
It's very cool to hear you explain that as well, because it shows us how deeply you understand the dynamic, not just between them, but like as them individually as characters.
Yeah.
And that translates regardless of Regency.
Or modern. Yeah.
So in terms of inspiration, it was just that Valentine's Day was coming up?
Valentine's Day was coming up. I think I actually posted this after Valentine's Day, so I might have written it a day or two after.
I think just like a couple days after.
Yeah, I think I posted a few days after.
So it was quick for you? It was a quick process?
Yeah, I wrote it pretty fast. I don't remember if it took me a day or two, but probably not longer than that. Because it's not very long. It's a pretty short fic. And I didn't edit it at all. And I handwrite everything. So I wrote it, typed it. I do some light editing when I type things up. So there's usually I'll add in some more description, or I'll adjust dialogue or whatever. Yeah,
so that's kind of your built-in, that's great. You write it, and then kind of your built-in extra moment is the typing in process.
Yes, yeah.
I like that process.
And so, and then I just post it because, again, it doesn't matter. I'm glad so many people enjoy reading it and reading my fics, but in the grand scheme of things, I'm really just writing them for me, just to get them out, just to get it out of my head and onto a piece of paper. But the inspiration for it, I think, was that Valentine's Day had just passed. There was a whole bunch of Valentine's fics that I was loving reading, and I was like, I can write a Valentine's fic. I haven't written anything in a while. And there is this movie called I Hate Valentine's Day, which I've always really liked the title of. The movie's okay. It's not bad. It's got Nia Vargas in it, who was in My Big Fat Greek Wedding. Uh-huh. And the plot is very different. The two plots of my fanfic and that movie have nothing to do with each other. But I really like the title, I Hate Valentine's Day. So that's kind of between my own feelings about Valentine's Day and that's kind of where the idea for Penelope Hates Valentine's Day
came
from.
The fic was born.
Yeah.
So speaking of inspiration, one of our listeners wanted to know Okay. Have you had any great ideas while crafting?
Oh, no. Probably not. Because, like, especially with crochet, you have to count.
You're right. And you do little
tiny things. And I usually have a YouTube video playing in the background, or like a sitcom or something like that, so that it's not super quiet in my house.
So generally, where does inspiration come from? Do you get it when you're doing certain things, or do you?
There's no one way. So with the first couple of Polin fanfictions I wrote, it was really, I read a lot of Polin fanfiction, and I was reading the book a lot, and I was like, there's some missing scenes that I kind of like.
Yeah, that was straightforward.
Yeah, especially the idea of Colin telling his family that he and Penelope weren't engaged. Like, I really wanted to see that, and I knew that we weren't getting...
You gave us the proposal that we deserved.
Yeah, we weren't getting anything like that in the show. And I just knew there's not going to be any kind of book equivalent to that in the show, because, again, the timelines are very different. So even if we do get the carriage and the "Are you going to marry me or not," how he tells his family on the show is going to be very different to how he would have told them in the book. So that's how I kind of started on that path. And then once I got started, my next kind of fic after Sunrise Over Mayfair was one...
A Kiss for a Quid.
Yes, A Kiss for a Quid.
That was a modern AU. So you went from deep inside Regency. You'd done Sunrise Over Mayfair and inside the book. Yeah. And then that you decided to do a modern AU. I
really liked the alliteration of A Kiss for a Quid, and I had read Operation Barista on AO3. Yeah. I can't remember the author at the moment, but I'm sure people have read it. It's actually a Cantonese fic, and it's so good, and it's so funny, and it's almost completely text based, where people are texting each other. And it was so good and so funny, and I love the dynamics of the family. And I think if you go to A Kiss for a Quid you'll see I have a link to it, because I wanted to write a text fic after I read that one.
So you read it and you're like, is it going to be a text fic? And then the next thing happens and it's not. It's a mixture. And I was like, yes, I love it. I love it when you can play with structure. You can play...
I've played with structure a bit. I think my favorite story where I played with the structure was Only Bought This Dress, which is another modern AU. Yeah. Where each chapter is kind of going back and forth between two different points in time. Yeah. Like, usually it's a part of Polin's past, like how they met or how she realized she loved him or whatever.
And sometimes it's the near past. Sometimes it's not even like the distant past. Yeah.
And sometimes it's the near past. Yeah. And so you're just learning different things about these characters kind of as the main timeline is progressing.
Exactly.
And one of the things I enjoy about fiction is about creating a world and creating a life for characters. And you don't always have to put everything explicitly on the page. So like in Only Bought This Dress, you learn that Colin and Penelope have this summer 90s OO's throwback playlist kind of thing that they put together one summer after Colin had kind of a bad breakup. And it's sort of throwaway. I mean, like, they sing to it and they get excited about it. But that just adds a layer to the character. We don't see a scene of them creating this playlist. It's kind of there. And then there's another moment where Colin is singing I Can't Help Falling in Love with You. I Can't Help Falling in Love with You at the wedding. And Penelope remembers seeing him sing that at karaoke nights and seeing him going to gigs to listen to him sing different songs and things like that. And again, you don't have to put those actual moments in the story.
Yeah. You know what else I love about Only Bought This Dress is it's a song fic.
It is?
And it's a lengthy song fic.
Yes. Which, again, sort of inspired by Dress by the Sushi Monster. They're very different stories, and her Dress is, one of the all-time great Polin fics.
Yes.
If people are listening and they have not read it, what are you doing?
Yes. It's on our Fics and Recs all-time favorite Polin fic list.
And, again, the stories are really different, but I think I read that one, and I really love Dress by Taylor Swift. It's a great song. It's definitely a Polin song. It's, everybody agrees it's a Polin song. And so I kind of wanted to have my own interpretation of it, because the song is essentially a friends to lovers song, and her fic Dress is a friends to lovers fic. But I wanted to interpret certain lyrics of the song without being obvious about it. So you'll see the chapter titles that I pick out are meant to, one of the chapter titles is Patiently Waiting. And you're like, what does this have to do with this chapter? And you don't really see what it has to do until you've read the whole chapter. And it's, and she is kind of ending the evening after this wonderful day, waiting for him to arrive, waiting for their life to start, or their relationship to start. And she's actually not that patient about it. And so I kind of wanted to do that with the chapter titles. And I kind of wanted to say, yes, this is inspired by a song, but it's also more inspired by the vibes of the song and the vibes of Friends to Lovers.
That I was literally just going to say that. I was like, this feels like the song. This is so the anticipation, like the way you kept them apart from each other.
Yeah.
That whole fic is like really such a specific world. It's a specific feeling. And I think it's because it's the song fic.
And music really plays a large part into it. And
it wasn't even towards the end. I was like, only bought this dress. I was like, she bought the dress at the beginning. Anyway, I love it.
Yeah, she bought the dress at the beginning, but it does come off at the end. So,
it does come off at the end.
So that's helpful. I actually think that fic is probably my favorite that I have written. I think in terms of skill, it is the best one that I have written. I just think it's, I don't compliment myself in my writing a lot, but I just think that one's a good one. If anybody who's listening hasn't read any of my works, I mean, you've listened.
Yes, we wrecked it. Everybody should read it.
That's the one I would start with.
What I love about this fic and a lot of your other fics is that you find ways to incorporate just subtle references to canon.
But I do try and put little nods. Like in this, on Valentine's Day, there's something. There was a cameo from Lucy Abernathy.
Lucy. Yes. And he's, yes. And Colin Matchmaker. You did a little Colin Matchmaker in there. And I was like, oh, yes. I loved it. My heart squeezed.
Yeah. Oh, and there's the eclairs are in this one. We make sure we get
the
some
eclairs.
That's love right. in here. So I think it's important when you are writing modern AUs to remember that they are in a different world, but that doesn't mean you can't bring in little pieces of their Regency world or their book world or the show world. You can still, because at the end of the day, they are still Colin and Penelope. But also, they're Colin and Penelope in the real world. So how does that, what does that look like?
And that's why I love modern AUs so much, is because then it's how then you really see how the authors interpret the characters and the essential, what each author considers the essential of them, or what they just consider the essential of them for that story, because you can always play and find different things about them to explore.
Yes.
But modern AUs kind of let us see how our authors view the characters for not just Polin, but for like the family characters. Like you said, your text fics are so specific. And I was really excited to dip our toes into texting, because there's only like a 5-line text in Penelope Hates Valentines Day.
Yeah.
So I was really excited to like figure out just design-wise, sound-wise, how we would handle it.
Yeah.
In a manageable section, because of course there's text fics everywhere, and I don't. Yeah. But it was I love that even though it was a little teeny tiny portion of Penelope Hates Valentine's Day, that you still included it, and it was still brilliant. Yeah. Elle was so Elle, and the way Colin just does it and puts his phone away.
Chaos Colin reigns supreme. Chaos Colin. If you don't have Chaos Colin in a fic, what are you doing?
I know, right? Drop the bomb and turn the phone off.
Yeah. I love Chaos Colin so much.
So you said the process for Penelope Hates Valentine's Day was pretty quick. Does that differ for the other fics? Like, do you it doesn't sound like you outlined Penelope Hates Valentine's Day. Do you outline?
No. It was pretty quick. So, outlining depends on the story. But the thing that I do the most, that's not really outlining, but it's when I take my dog on walks, I will think through what I want to write. And I will kind of play the scene through in my head and play the dialogue through my head and kind of finagle with it and see what works best and what doesn't. And that's usually I do that for a couple of days before I actually sit down and write anything. I'm just kind of thinking about the scene, thinking about the characters in my head. I also do that to help me fall asleep.
I do too. Not writing stories, but thinking about your stories.
Thinking about my stories, yeah. And so I have a lot of plans, or I had a lot of plans for my kind of abandoned, quote unquote, fics.
Well, let's get to that, actually. And let me formally ask you, what are you working on now? And can I also say that we got a sweet listener hoping to specifically hear about any plans you have for the punishment she deserves.
Yeah. So that fic also kind of went off the rails a little bit. Because I told you when we were...
It's so good.
I know. I told you when we were texting...
I know. I was so excited for her because I knew I was going to get some information for her. So when she asked that question, I was like, please listen to the podcast.
I have all these voice memos with... chapter ideas for that fic. And the problem is that I got ahead of myself. I wrote the chapter that has all of Colin's letters. I wrote that.
Yeah.
Not meaning to publish it as a separate chapter yet. I meant to hold back and to publish the chapter where Violet starts receiving the letters and is wondering about the letters. And eventually there was going to be a reason that she needed to open the letters. I didn't know what the reason was yet. There was going to be a reason. And that's when I was going to reveal what the letter said.
Oh. Hey, though, why don't you just go back and take it back?
Take
back the chapter.
Too excited, and I wanted people to read those letters. So I messed myself up because now, like, all the chapters I had planned are kind of out.
But would you ever go back and take it back?
I probably wouldn't take it back. I would probably just move forward and work myself around it. And
I'm glad you gave us the letters because I love them so much. That his increasing desperation.
Yeah. So I think my problem is one of the reasons why I kind of halted is because I can't really decide how I want the queen to actually punish Penelope. Like, we know that she's in the queen's custody right now, but we don't know what her conditions are. We don't know... like if she's safe, if she's, we don't really know anything about that. And so I have thought of several different things that could have been happening to her during her imprisonment or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But
it's been months, right? It's been 1 month?
Yeah. I think it's been about 6 weeks because it happened at the very end of the season, right after Colin left. And he comes back for Kate and Anthony's wedding, which is a month to 6 to 8 weeks after the season ended. So it's somewhere in that time frame. And where we left off, Colin is just concerned because she's not in town, essentially. None of her family is at their house. And that's kind of where we left off. I do think... and I've been thinking a lot about it. I really want to write a scene where Colin goes to Ireland thinking that Penelope's going to be there. And basically Portia reveals to Colin that Penelope is Lady Whistledown. That's kind of, I think, the kind of next place I want to go with it.
I love it when authors make me just sit here like the emoji with the mouth open and the eyes wide. Like, I'm just
So that's where I think I want kind of to go.
Because then who would get that chapter? Would that be Portia's chapter?
I think it would either be from Portia's point of view or it would be from Mrs. Varley's point of view. Because I can still give information on, like, what was in the note that Penelope passed to Mrs. Varley before she was taken by the guards, and what Varley did to get the Modiste, the package, and, all those things. And so I do really want to get back to that one. But actually, the one that I have been really ruminating not working on, is the amnesia.
Oh my god, I love you so much. Yes.
Because here's the thing.
Okay, we need to pause the podcast so I can get up and dance, and I'm sorry, we're going to take a break. I don't have sponsors, so just hang out, guys. Just hang out for 5 seconds because I'm not the kind of reader that asks authors to do things, but I really wanted the amnesia fic. It is so it's angsty in a really interesting way.
It is angsty. And when I posted it, the idea was at some point I would come back to it and I would write some more chapters and it would be a full-fledged fic. And I go back all the time and reread it because I really enjoy it. I really like it.
I do too. I would say that's one of my top ones that I reread. Yeah. Because the pain is really good, and I just want to will you to keep writing it. Like
the pain. So it is self-contained. It was written in a way that it could be a one-shot. So, if I never finish it, I don't feel that bad about it. But
you should feel bad now because now you'll be hurting me directly.
I know. One of the reasons I really want to finish it is because a lot of the comments I was getting on it were really hard on Colin, and that was not my intention. Like, no, I didn't intend for people to, like, be upset and be mad at Colin in this fic. And I realized that
interesting.
I realized his inner thoughts in this fic can seem kind of like, oh, he really doesn't like Penelope. But that, I really wasn't intending that. It was more of, I was intending to show when you have something traumatic that happens and you wake up and you don't remember your life anymore, you're going to lash out. You're going to be angry and upset. And for some reason, this Colin is focusing a lot of that anger on Penelope. And I think it's because even if this Colin doesn't remember their loving relationship, like their romantic relationship, he recognizes Penelope as someone who is safe for him to get mad at, and that she's not going to turn away from him. She's not going to leave him. She's not going to abandon him. You would think he would almost sort of lash out at a family member or something like that, who you would also kind of feel those things for. But no, he's focused on Penelope. Even in this state where he does not remember their relationship, he is focused on her. And so I really want to explore that some more, and I really want to explore how he goes from not remembering the relationship to coming to the decision that he wants to sort of redevelop it, that if the Colin that he was before the accident was so in love with Penelope, and I have some little moments where he's going to kind of figure out how in love he was with Penelope, even if he doesn't quite remember them yet. And he's going to want to be like, okay, if I was so in love with Penelope, why? And he's going to want to get to know her all over again. And we're going to see him fall in love with her all over again.
Fall in love with her again, yeah. I think sometimes people are just looking for reasons to hate Colin.
Yeah.
I think he was disoriented, and it was all disorienting, right?
Yeah.
And so to me, what you did a really great job of was that he's 8 years ago, Colin.
Yes, exactly.
And this is a person who hasn't had 8 years of experience to figure his stuff out,
Exactly.
When you read fics, especially rare parafics, or like fics where people always like punish Colin, he's just a person and he needs to figure his stuff out,
Correct. Yeah. And I also don't think that Penelope would want to punish Colin. No. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see how the show deals with it. But like the way I dealt with it in Sunrise Over Mayfair was she got her moment to tell him what happened. She was able to say, this is why it hurt me. This is why I'm being cold with you. Like, you need to do better.
But that's also why I like the dynamic of this piece, is because Penelope is 8 years wiser.
Yes.
So for her, it was 8 years ago. For him, it was like yesterday. And so playing with that dynamic just brings me back to Dress, where you're playing with timeline dynamics, even though we're in the present day. So I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a special one for me.
There'll be some playing with that a little bit too if I move forward with it, because he's going to start having memories coming back to him.
Yeah.
And he's going to start like visiting people from his past. And he's going to start learning things about his past, about Penelope's past. So I don't usually bring Lady Whistledown into modern fics because I don't think it works very well. Because I think the reason Lady Whistledown works in the Regency period is because she's specifically talking to an audience the ton. Those people mostly know who everybody is. So she can get out information about them. I think it's a little bit harder when you have her be like a celebrity gossip columnist or something in a modern AU, because how is she learning that information about all these celebrities? It's just not gonna. She's not gonna have the same ability. So I don't usually bring that into my modern AUs, I will say. But I think for the Amnesia fic, it's not gonna be she's Lady Whistledown writing gossip. But I think there's going to be an aspect of that personality that gets drawn in to the modern world, and that is going to cause problems for their relationship.
I don't know if this is too much of a spoiler, if you even know, but will it have affected his relationship with Marina?
Yes.
Yeah, so that is so much room for angst.
Yeah. And well, and, you know, in the beginning, in that story, when he thinks about him and Marina's relationship ending, he doesn't know how it ended, but he knows Penelope had something to do with it. He doesn't know why he knows that, but he knows that. Like, just deep down, he knows it. And so he's going to find out that he was right. That Penelope had something to do with it. And I think... I don't know if I'm ever going to write it. I hope I do. But so hopefully I'm not spoiling this too much. But he's going to, I think, find out from Marina herself that Penelope is the reason.
OMG. Yeah. I just said OMG.
So.
Okay, so that's exciting. So right now, what's at the forefront for what's next is the amnesia fic.
Probably,
potentially still thinking about the punishment she deserves.
Yes, yeah. I probably won't write anything new. If I do start writing anything, it'll be on one of those two fics, or I do still also have my Christmas fic that I started for a giveaway that I never finished. So that, and again, that I have plans for that I just haven't worked on. So it'll be one of the three. Most likely the amnesia will come first, because that's what I kind of have been rolling around in my head the most.
Happy dance.
But we'll see.
Although I'll be happy to get anything from you, honestly. But that's good to hear that you're returning to works in progress.
Yes.
Because I consider the amnesia fic, my heart considered it a work in progress, because you a little teeny bit said you might come back to it. So I'm glad. I was like, I have to get Rachel on the podcast and make her tell me.
Well, I've already given so much information about it. Do you really need it now?
This is the end of the podcast. Thanks for tuning in. I'm gonna go cry now. Just gonna sob.
I'm just teasing.
No, you don't have to write it.
I do really want to, though.
If you don't write it, I'll revisit this and I'll listen to it and I'll
Yeah, I do really want to. I do enjoy that little piece a lot. So hopefully
I just think the potential is so massive.
Yeah. I don't write a lot of angst. I think my background in loving love is too much of a romantic to put too much angst in anything.
Well, that as an angst person makes me feel safe, because I'm a hurt comfort person. So like the people who are angst writers who are like, I'm going to destroy you, I'm just going to finish you, I'm like intrigued by it, but like I always end up like a little bit broken forever. But like when people who love write angst, I know I'm going to be taken care of at the end. I know there's going to be aftercare for me. I know everything's going to be okay. And then you're going to get me, like it's going to be a journey to get me to a good place. So I feel safe when fluff and romance writers write angst, because like you do understand angst, you do understand pain in a beautiful way, and I know that I'm going to be okay at the end.
Yeah. Well, I just think I bring that up because I do think that's why I've sort of stalled on, especially the punishment she deserves and the amnesia thing.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
I think it's harder for me to write the angst. I remember some of the first comments I got on the punishment she deserves were so many people upset that I was trying to punish Penelope. And I'm like, I'm not trying to punish Penelope. Like, I'm just exploring an option. Like, that's all it is. It's not like...
You write that at the beginning of every chapter.
Yeah.
And I love that you do, honestly, because that's the stuff that I want to read authors deep diving into, like every crevice of every possibility.
Yeah.
I don't want them to be punishing the characters because they don't like the characters. I want them to tell a story because they think the story's interesting.
Exactly.
And that's what the punishment she deserves is. And that's why it's so special to me, is like I feel safe reading that, because even if it does end up angsty, I know it'll still have been you exploring that story from a place of loving the story of Colin and Penelope.
Yes.
It won't be from a place of punishment. It'll be from a place of exploring what would happen if.
Yeah, exactly.
The podcast is called Fics and Recs.
Yes.
And I love asking our authors, what is your all-time favorite Polin fan fiction? Okay. I know it's a hard question.
It was a very hard question.
I know.
I remember before you asked me to narrow it down. I was thinking like, oh, this is my favorite Regency, this is my favorite modern, this is my favorite in progress, this is blah blah. So
nope, just one.
Yeah, just one. So I did narrow it down, and the one I picked is the one that is kind of my comfort Polin fic. I come back to it a lot. It's not very long. It's only 1,990 words. It's a one-shot. It's called Thy Mother's Delight by 3 Fundamental Truths. Also just another fantastic fic writer on AO3.
It's just so sweet. And it's got lots of family.
Yes. A lot of family dynamics.
The whole family dynamics. It's chaos and fun. And
it's really sweet. And I think the reason I love coming back to it, because I think the author really nails all of the characters. Like, they all feel very in tune with the book characters that I love. And I really love domestic Polin.
Same.
So I think that's one of the reasons I love this fic so much.
No, but you're right. Domestic bliss Polin post HEA or in their HEA is so sweet. And this is absolutely, you're totally right. Such a perfect example of that. And it includes the family. And it includes Agatha.
Yeah, so, we love the baby Polin.
The
Penlins. We love them so much. And I like this one a lot because it shows what a good father Colin definitely is.
Yeah.
I just think it's a beautifully crafted, very well written, gorgeous little story. So everyone go read it. Thy Mother's Delight by 3 Fundamental Truths. I go back to it. I've probably read it 10 or 15 times. It's so good. Yeah, that's my favorite.
And I was thrilled when you said this one because it's a one-shot.
It's a one-shot,
so it has everything that you need in that, just that little package of serotonin for you.
That's a very good way of describing it.
And I just was really thrilled that this was your choice.
Yeah, it's so good.
Thank you for it.
It's so good. Everyone go read it, and everyone go read all 3 Fundamental Truths fics.
Yes. Thank you for your recommendation. Thank you for spending time with us. Thank you for letting me read Penelope Hates Valentine's Day. It has been a joy.
You're welcome.
Thank you, listeners, readers, and friends, for choosing to tune in. Your support means the world to us. Links to Rachel 619's AO3 Author Profile, her published books, Yellow Duck Crochet, as well as her Polin fic recommendation can all be found on the Fics and Recs social media pages. Join us next time for more fanfiction, conversations, and recommendations. Until then, this is WMN. Happy reading.